We're going to talk about the situation in Lebanon, more generally issues concerning the Near East. With you, Abul Hassan Gelfi, you're the ambassador of Iran here in France. The return of Saad Hariri to Lebanon, is it a good thing for Lebanon and for the region? We think that the situation and security and peace in Lebanon is necessary for the whole of the region. The region in which we live, and for everybody who lives in that region, the stability of Lebanon is an important element, and that's the reason for which we have always supported the Lebanese to try and calm things down and to have a normal situation for the Lebanese. Did you encourage him to remain Prime Minister? The situation inside Lebanon belongs to the Lebanese. It's for the Lebanese to decide. But before this event, before Hariri's departure for Saudi Arabia after visiting certain countries, before then, the situation in Lebanon was calm. Saudi Arabia is searching in a way to move things, to get the region moving in circumstances which call for certain justifications, pretexts, because of the domestic situation in Saudi Arabia. So we think that the tension in the region started rising a few years ago in Syria, then Yemen, and more recently in Qatar, and today Lebanon. We always notice that certain events have provoked a rise in tension in the region for other motives, which are domestic Saudi motives. You denounce the meddling of Saudi Arabia in the region. The Secretary General of the Hezbollah, Nasrallah, says that Hariri is a hostage of Saudi Arabia in Saudi Arabia. It's only Nasrallah who said that Hariri was the hostage of Saudi Arabia. The president of Lebanon also accused the Saudis of taking Hariri hostage. That is to say, how can you imagine that a free country like Lebanon, the prime minister visits a neighboring country and is taken hostage by the regime? And that he's determined to prevent him from leaving the country. It's not reasonable. It's for Saudi Arabia to answer the question. Why have they acted in this way? Why are they acting in a detrimental way to security and calm? Saad Hariri, when he announced his resignation, and in an interview on Lebanese television, he reversed the accusation. He mentioned the case of the Hezbollah in Lebanon. He talked about the stranglehold of Hezbollah on Lebanon. The statements by Saudi Arabia during a period which was not very clear. We need to wait for the situation in Lebanon to return to normal. Not very clear regarding the freedom of expression of Saad Hariri. I can't judge all this. I prefer to let time play its part, and the time will come when the Lebanese will be able to express their views freely. So I'm speaking from our point of view. The Hezbollah in Lebanon is part of the Lebanese society. They are members of the Lebanese parliament. They are part of Lebanon. They defend Lebanon. They defend the freedom of Lebanon. They defend Lebanese society. The Hezbollah will answer this accusation, but in Iran, we have relations with all members of Lebanese society, the Hezbollah and others, the Maronites, the Druze, and everybody else. The Hezbollah are close to Iran. The involvement of the Hezbollah in conflicts outside Lebanon, the war in Syria, doesn't that make things more complicated for Lebanon? Doesn't it go against the neutrality of Lebanon, which Lebanon wants to retain? contained because of its multi-religious characteristic. We are not the spokespersons of the Hezbollah. We can't answer on behalf of the Hezbollah. But I can repeat, I can mention that if it weren't for Hezbollah today, ISIS would be much more powerful in the Middle East. The Hezbollah have been defending Lebanon and the Lebanese from ISIS. And the Hezbollah have been the best defenders of Lebanon and the Lebanese against ISIS. And it's a big advantage for the Lebanese, but it's for the Lebanese to decide. The weapon of the Hezbollah are at the service of defending Lebanon. So this is why the Lebanese give Hezbollah the advantage of defending Lebanon's freedom. France is involved in Saad Hariri's departure from Saudi Arabia. President Macron expressed the wish that Iran should have a less aggressive regional strategy. I have said regarding Iran, our wish is that Iran should have a regional strategy that is less aggressive and that we should be able to clarify its missile policy, which seems not under control. But Iran is a power we wish to have a dialogue with and which we will continue to have a dialogue with. The day before, on Thursday, I'd like you to react. The French Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jean-Yves Le Drian, visiting Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, was concerned about the hegemonic tendencies of Iran. And this is the answer of Ali Akbar Velayati. It's not in the interest of Mr. Macron and of France to meddle in sensitive issues in Iran, such as our regional strategy and our missile policy. Such meddling will damage the image of France in the eyes of the Iranians. Our missile program has nothing to do with Mr. Macron. Why does he meddle in this? He should not meddle in this affair. If he wishes to see good relations between Paris and Tehran, he must not do so. This episode, this crisis, the Saad Hariri crisis, will it weigh on the future of relations between France and Iran? We have quite friendly relations with France in the context of cooperation with France on the basis of mutual interests on both sides. It began after the signing of the nuclear agreement. France played an important role and a decisive role in the signing of that agreement, and we have made progress in our relations. And I think we should insist on the fact that each country has its positions. There are some differences of views, but dialogue is the best way to describe our approach to France. It has already started with the visit of our president to France 2 years ago, and it will continue with their meeting in New York. And yesterday, the president spoke by telephone. They will continue in the days to come to arrive at reducing tension in the region, which is a very sensitive region. You understand why France is concerned about Iran's missile test. Emmanuel Macron at the UN had evoked the possibility of a codicil to the agreement with Iran on ballistic missiles. The nuclear agreement is not something that can be negotiated. It's a nuclear agreement, and the 5+1 know that there is no other way of dealing with this issue. The missile question, the Iranian missile question, concerns our national defense, Iran's national defense. We are living in a very dangerous and difficult region. We have countries like Saudi Arabia, who's only 15 minutes away from our country. They spent $80 billion on military expenditure. So we also have experience of an 8-year war with Iraq. Saddam Hussein. We asked all the countries in the world to help us, to give us some facilities. Nobody was prepared to support us, to help us. Russia more than France. Russia helped you more than France. I'm speaking in the context of the time. We have decided to count on ourselves, to rely on ourselves. Our national defense is totally national. We have the capacity to defend ourselves. It's not negotiable. We have no intention of exercising hegemony over other countries in the region. Our presence, we have advisors in Iraq, in Syria, at the request, the official request of the governments of those countries. And as soon as they ask us to leave, Iran will leave those countries. But on the other hand, you can see what's happening in Yemen. That's what I was going to ask you. Yemen, the Arab League accuses you, or accuses the Hezbollah, of having armed the Houthi rebels and of being responsible for the missile strike against Riyadh last month. Yes. Is the situation in Yemen today different from what could happen in Syria or in Iraq? Are the Iraqis are Arab or not? Are the Syrians Arabic or not? And when ISIS invaded the region, when the terrorists of ISIS invaded the region, we fought back from the very beginning. It was not the Houthis against today. It's not the Houthis aren't fighting the ISIS. Let me explain, if I may. We were against ISIS, which was attacking the region. If we hadn't been there, if the Hezbollah hadn't been there, today ISIS would have conquered the Damascus or other capitals in the region. So today, a small country like Yemen, which is totally blockaded by Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region, it has nothing to defend itself. And we have people have said that Iran has intervened. We have not intervened in Yemen. Didn't you arm the Houthi rebellion? And wasn't the missile made by Iran? We have not accelerated anything in Yemen. We don't share a border with Yemen. The entire country of Yemen is blockaded by Saudi Arabia. It's blockaded from the sea, from the air, from land. There was a potential. Yemen had a potential for defense. Wasn't it the Hezbollah who gave weapons to the Houthi rebels? No. Everything that belongs to us in Iran, there is no link between our capacity and Yemen missile capacity. It's quite clear. We have already stated the manufacturing of missiles by Yemen. It's for the Yemenites to answer that question, who manufactured them. We think they had reserves, missile reserves from the past. Today, they tried to change the technique a little bit, but they want to defend themselves. They have no other way of defending themselves from Saudi Arabia and other neighboring countries which have blockaded that country. The return of Shiite pilgrims and Iranians to Mecca for the pilgrimage, is it the beginning of the normalization of your relations with Saudi Arabia since the incident in Mecca, which had led to a breaking of diplomatic relations? We are neighbors of Saudi Arabia and other countries. We live with difficult neighbors. It's not easy, but Saudi Arabia's commitment towards the Muslims of the world is very different from the diplomatic relations between states. Saudi Arabia is committed on the level of Islamic countries to prepare and facilitate the pilgrimage of Muslims to Mecca. So if Saudi Arabia does anything to open up and reduce tensions, we are willing to engage in a dialogue with Saudi Arabia. We've already proposed this without any prerequisites or conditions. A quick return to France. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jean-Yves Le Drian, postponed his visit to Tehran. Are you disappointed? Were you expecting President Macron's visit to Tehran? And will President Hassan Rouhani visit France before Macron comes to Iran? Because President Macron has just invited him to go to Paris in December for the climate summit on December the 12th. Will Mr. Rouhani come? Regarding the visit of Mr. Le Drian's visit to Tehran, there was a problem of dates. There was a clash of dates. The minister had another trip organized, and the dates had already been fixed. It was the 20th of November. And on the 20th of November, the minister had to go to Burma, had to go to Myanmar, because of the situation and because of certain commitments to Myanmar. So we agreed to let him go to Myanmar. And that is the reason for which, through diplomatic channels, we are talking together to change the date of the visit. There hasn't been a postponement or a cancellation or anything. It was a problem of a clashing of dates. Regarding the presidential visit, our president visited France 2 years ago. We have invited the French president to come to Iran when the moment is ripe. The French president will set the date for his visit to Tehran. We are in touch. We have heard through the media that the president of France would like to invite us to set the date. And then there's the invitation to attend the climate summit on 12th of December in Paris. This is something new. We are checking this invitation. A presidential visit cannot be organized overnight, so we are verifying the dates and the availability of our president. So in due course, it has nothing to do with our bilateral relations with France, but it could be possible. It could be possible. And if he comes to France, he will certainly meet President Macron if the president's agenda allows this. And one last question. At the beginning of the week, Donald Trump decided to put North Korea on the list of countries that support terrorism. Are you afraid, following the decertification by the White House of the nuclear agreement with Iran, that ultimately the Guardians of the Revolution will also be put on the list of terrorist organizations? The Americans, in spite of all the rumors, have not denounced the nuclear agreement with Iran. There are some difficulties. We have had historically difficult relations with the United States of America. At every period, we have to deal with certain difficulties. Our relationship is one thing, and the Americans' commitment, they have signed up to the nuclear commitment, and they haven't denounced it yet. So after the change of president in Washington, it's different. Of course, things are different. And Washington's position regarding North Korea is very different from our relationship with the United States of America. There's no reason to compare North Korea and Iran regarding nuclear energy. Mr. Ambassador of Iran here in Paris, thank you for accepting our invitation.
Reporters, presented by Mark Owen.
It is one of the most dangerous pilgrimages in the world. Every year, millions of Shiites journey to southern Iraq to the holy sites of Karbala and Najaf, despite the ever-present threat of the Islamic State group, which regards them as heretics. more and more Iranians are undertaking this risky journey. From Tehran to the Euphrates Valley, our reporters joined a group of young students who had undertaken this dangerous pilgrimage, often against their parents' wishes.
Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.